One morning, the classroom doors opened, and the professor walked in, carrying something unusual. Instead of the usual books or notes, he held a large empty glass jar. His eyes carried the same spark of wisdom and curiosity that always captured his students' attention. Everyone in the room sat up straighter, wondering what lesson he was about to teach this time. The professor set the jar carefully on the desk. Without saying a word, he reached under the table and pulled out several large rocks, each about the size of a fist. One by one, he began placing them into the jar. The room was completely silent as the students watched. Slowly, the jar filled up until no more rocks could fit. Finally, he looked up at the class with a gentle smile. "Is this jar full now?" he asked. The students leaned forward, examining it closely. Could clearly see there was no more space for additional rocks. Almost everyone nodded and said together, "Yes, sir. It's full." But the professor didn't answer. Instead, he reached down again and this time brought out a bag of small pebbles. He carefully poured them into the jar. With a light shake, the pebbles slipped down, filling the spaces between the larger rocks. He looked at the class again. "Now is the jar full?" Some students hesitated, remembering the professor's unusual teaching style. But many still replied, "Yes, sir. Now it's really full." The professor only smiled knowingly. He reached under the table once again and produced a bag of fine sand. Slowly, he poured the sand into the jar. The grains slipped smoothly into every tiny gap between the rocks and pebbles until the jar seemed packed. Again he asked, "Is the jar full now?" The entire class laughed softly. This time, instead of shouting yes, they said, "Probably." The professor chuckled along with them. Then, as if he had saved the final surprise for last, he pulled out a mug of water. Carefully, he poured it into the jar. The water seeped down through the sand, spreading into every little gap, until the jar was completely filled. He placed the mug down, smiled, and said, "Yes, now the jar is truly full." The students were fascinated, waiting for him to explain what this demonstration really meant. The professor looked around at their curious faces and began speaking in a calm, thoughtful voice. "This jar," he said, gently tapping on the glass, "represents your life. The big rocks are the most important things you will ever have: your family, your health, your closest relationships, your deepest dreams and passions. These are your true priorities. Even if you lose everything else, as long as you still have these rocks, your life will remain full and meaningful." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "The pebbles represent the other important things in life: your career, your education, your house, your car. They matter, yes, but they are not as essential as the rocks. They are things that give stability and comfort, but they are not the foundation of your life." "And the sand," he said, his voice softening, "represents the little things, the daily distractions. Scrolling endlessly on social media, wasting hours on trivial arguments, unnecessary shopping, meaningless tasks that consume time but add no true value. They are small, yet if you let them fill your life first, they will take up all the space. And then there will be no room left for the rocks." The students sat quietly, reflecting on their own lives. Many of them realized how often they had let the sand take over the late nights spent aimlessly online, the wasted hours chasing after things that didn't matter, while ignoring the things that truly did. The professor continued, his tone deep and serious. "This is the truth of life. If you spend all your time and energy on the small things, you will never have space left for what really matters. Your family, your health, your dreams, these are your rocks. They must come first. Everything else should be placed around them." A stillness fell over the room. The students understood that this lesson wasn't just about a jar, it was about their entire future. Then, after a brief silence, one curious student raised a hand and asked, "Sir, what about the water? What does it represent?" The professor smiled warmly, his eyes sparkling with kindness. "That," he said, "is an excellent question. The water represents the little joys of life. No matter how full your jar may seem, no matter how busy or overwhelming your days may feel, there is always space for small moments of happiness. The water is laughter with a friend. It's sipping tea in the evening after a long day. It's watching the rain fall or sharing a smile with someone you love. These moments may seem small, but they make life richer. He leaned forward and added, "Life is not limitless. Time is not limitless. If you fill your days only with sand and pebbles, you will regret not having space for your rocks. Lace your rocks first. Protect your family, care for your health, follow your dreams. And in between, let the pebbles and sand take their place. Never forget the water, the little bursts of joy that make all the struggles worthwhile." The professor's voice grew softer as he gave his final message. At the end of your journey, when you look back, it will not be the sand that defines the value of your life. It will not be the pebbles. It will be the rocks, the things you chose to protect, the people you loved, the passions you followed, and the health you nurtured. Do not mistake busyness for meaning. True life is not about counting the days, it is about making the days count. The students sat in silence, some with smiles, others with tears in their eyes. In that moment, they weren't just listening to a lecture. They were receiving a reminder that could shape the rest of their lives. So the jar filled with rocks, pebbles, sand, and water became more than just a classroom experiment, became a timeless lesson, a reminder that our lives too are jars and it is up to us to choose what we fill them with. So ask yourself today, what are your rocks? Have you placed them first, or have you let the sand and pebbles crowd out the things that truly matter? Remember, you only get one jar, one life. Fill it wisely.